A big thank you to 505 Games for sponsoring today's video. Hey, it's Lemon. Welcome to the Backlogs. Today, we're gonna go on a bit of an adventure together. I've placed some chapters in the timeline if you're here for something specific, but considering the history of the game we're here to talk about, I figured it was worth dwelling for a moment. Back in the 90s and early aughts, I was in the throes of my gaming addiction, playing literally anything that came my way. This was a few years before Steam was a thing, and my backlog was non-existent. Ravenous for new worlds to escape to, every genre was free game, and somewhere along the lines, I found JRPGs. Back then, JRPGs were a bit different. The core systems were still there: turn-based combat, story-driven worlds, a tendency to center around swords and magic, but there was a certain rawness to them that seems to have fallen away over time. Don't get me wrong, every genre of gaming has adapted over the decades, and so long as you're having fun with the game, it doesn't matter if it remains true to its origins. But for me personally, JRPGs had lost something. I'm not sure if it was the slow death of the turn-based actions or the increase in overly flashy animations that did it, but after a few years, I just wasn't interested anymore. Gone were the days where I explored every inch of Pokemon, Lunar Legends, and Fire Emblem. The world of JRPGs had moved on, and so did I. But now, thanks to Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, an echo of that past has resurfaced, and, to my pleasant surprise, it doesn't try to force the old ways back into the gaming scene. Rather, it blends the joy of old-school JRPGs with some modern quality-of-life improvements, creating a mixture of smooth gameplay mechanics and cozy nostalgia. So, with that said, let's get into it. In Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, you'll be joining the adventure as Noah, a new recruit to a band of soldiers known as the Watch. He's young, eager, and has a tendency to meddle with everyone's personal affairs. Perfect protagonist material. Before long, we're quickly introduced to the world's greatest tension, an uneasy alliance between the Imperial Empire and the League of Nations. In this world, powerful items known as rune lenses can be used to obtain magic powers, which morph to the needs of the user. The Empire is focused on creating technology that will make it so that anyone can use rune lenses, and has been developing technology that increases a rune lens's natural power as well. So naturally, when a source of even greater power is discovered, primal lenses, the Empire does what any nation that willingly calls itself the Empire would do. It begins to hunt them down and collect them, no matter the cost. And so, what started as an eager adventure to explore the world quickly becomes a story about political conflict and war, with all of the characters we've met along the way being dragged into the fighting, and not always on the same side of the battlefield. Now, I've been asked not to spoil too much of the story, so we'll leave it there. But I really enjoyed how Eiyuden approached things. The serious moments are given proper gravitas and weight, but the game also understands that 50 plus hours of serious warfare and political infighting is too much, interspersing the story with plenty of lighthearted moments that legitimately made me laugh out loud.
I consider yours the best team for this mission. Good luck, don't die, etc.
It's important to note that the story of Eiyuden is its main focus, and the game will ask you to get invested in its world. Normally, such an ask would be risky, as a single unlikable party member could drag the whole endeavor down. But considering the game does in fact deliver on its promise to give you 100 plus heroes to choose from over the course of the campaign, finding characters that are enjoyable to play alongside is easy enough. To my surprise, every single one of those characters are voice acted, and the voice acting itself is very well done. Combine this with each character's individualized animations and attacks, and I was quickly able to become attached to my favorite characters. The old school charm continues outside of cutscenes as well, with sprites of characters making their way around a detailed 3D world. And I do mean world. There are multiple lands to traverse, and a whole collection of cities, towns, and dungeons to explore. And don't worry, the music that accompanies you on your adventure fits like a tailored glove, and I found myself stopping mid-journey to appreciate that soundtrack more than once. If you're open and receptive to getting swept into the world of Eiyuden Chronicle, you will be. Moving on to the mechanics, it's exactly what you'd hope for when thinking of a game that attempts to bridge the gap between old school and modern JRPGs. Combat is turn-based, and centers around your character's health, mana pool, and skill points. Skill points generate every turn, giving your character access to stronger attacks as every battle goes on, while health and mana must be managed with consumables and abilities. On the other side of the field, enemy information isn't given to you, so it'll be up to you to discover which tactics and attacks work best when fighting against them. This also makes every fight feel a bit more nerve-wracking, since you can't analyze an enemy before diving in. That said, there are a few mechanics at play to help smooth out that old-school difficulty. There's a timeline above the fight so you can plot out which enemies might be worth attacking first. Specific pairings of teammates will be able to do hero combos, allowing for interesting new tactics. And there's a cover mechanic as well that lets one character step in to take damage for another when that character is low on health. These changes do a fantastic job of keeping the combat flowing while taking away some of the more frustrating elements, and I appreciate that delicate touch. As far as leveling up your team goes, there's not much to it. Gain experience, watch as your team gets stronger. Hitting certain levels will unlock new skill slots, which will allow your characters to use new moves or insert items to give them a boost in specific stats, but that's about it. It's worth noting that your characters all gain experience when fighting together as a squad, but only if they're in your squad. A character that gets downed in combat won't gain any experience for that fight, and characters left back at headquarters won't grow until you take them out into the field. However, this doesn't mean you'll have a bunch of dead weight every time you change your party. Characters who are under-leveled gain experience at an increased rate, which means they'll be able to catch up to the rest of your party after a few encounters. Which is great, because you'll want a well-rounded party before reaching the bosses, all of whom are difficult battles of endurance. Each 10+ minute battle demands your full attention, with bosses dealing high damage and using all sorts of abilities to keep you off balance. Boss fights also incorporate gimmicks, their words, not mine, that helps with the fight in some way, whether it's dodging behind debris or using nearby objects to your advantage. Outside of combat, party management is also very smooth, with the game showing exactly what you need to know when considering gear and items. Things like choosing your party's marching order, keeping track of your surroundings with multiple maps, and a quest log reminding you of any tasks you've acquired along the way are all here as well, and do a great job of giving the player enough information to work with while never becoming overbearing. Eiyuden also boasts several other game modes as the story progresses. You'll be managing entire battalions of soldiers on grand-scale battlefields, engaging in one-on-one duels, complete with swelling music and literally rising tensions, and even do some city building and management that will help you build and maintain your army. Just when you think you've got your head wrapped around the game, another mechanic appears, giving you another layer of gameplay to explore and incorporate into your strategies. It seemed like every hour I played brought with it a new mechanic. And unlike some games that overwhelm you with pages upon pages of explanations, Eiyuden staggers these new additions to the formula well enough that players will feel ready and eager for whatever new layer the game offers next. Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes offers a nostalgic adventure without being stuck in the past, balancing between old-school pillars and new-school quality of life improvements in a surprisingly adept way. The game also does a great job of easing players into the world, with the buildup of mechanics keeping the game fresh while simultaneously adding a slowly ramping difficulty to the game. The difficulty itself feels well balanced, with plenty of options to make the game even harder, if you lean more old school than new. That said, I personally found the difficulty more than equal to the task of destroying my squad and forcing me to reconsider my tactics from time to time. So take that for what you will. Oh, and because there's nowhere else in the script to put this, I just wanted to give some praise to whoever decided that equipping the dash boots item not only gives your player faster speed while fighting, but also increases your run speed out of combat. Seriously can't thank you enough on that one. Overall, I had a great time with the world that Eiyuden presents. The cities are vibrant and a joy to explore, the characters are fun to discover and morph your strategies around, and the atmosphere of the game, whether it's the ever-expanding political intrigue, the desperation of watching victory slowly slipping from your grip on the battlefield, or simply wandering around the overworld, is more than enough to keep me on board for the entire ride. However, no world is without flaws, and 100 Heroes is no different. Starting with some of my smaller gripes, there was a few moments where I felt like things were completely out of my control, with the game basically flipping a coin to determine the outcome. One particular boss had me picking between two grimoires to do a large stun attack, but gave no indication which was the correct one to choose at any given moment. I analyzed the footage a bit after the fight, and I'm pretty sure there's no tell, so you're essentially choosing to give up a player's action in return for a chance to do more damage, which sounds fair on paper, but doesn't feel all that great. This sort of RNG doesn't happen often, but that made it stand out all the more when it did. I also wasn't a fan of the player callouts, or rather, their lack of variety. A man could only hear, "Magical cutie missile!" so many times before quietly deciding that maybe we don't need a mage in the party anymore. The enemies have a similar problem, with some of their death throws going on far too long, resulting in some strange overlapping callouts.
What? So long! So, this is it.
Throw me someone stronger next time.
Another thing that took getting used to was the fact that you're not always allowed to explore the world at your own pace. There were a couple of times where the game had a very specific idea of where I should be going and railroaded me until I completed the next story beat. As I said before, the main pillar of this game is its story, so expect to be directed back to it more often than not. Other minor gripes include the puzzles in the dungeons, which tended to be a bit too easy to solve and only acted as a speed bump on my way to the boss, and some of the characters being, well, a bit much. Jesus, calm down, lady. You're making me nervous. But the biggest problem of the game, and one that caught me completely off guard, is how long it takes to get into the game proper. To illustrate my point, I didn't even know that army battles were a thing until 8 hours into the game, with city management popping up around the 10-hour mark. Now, some would argue that this is just the game adding on new mechanics as it goes. After all, the game is between 50 and 60 hours long, so it makes sense not to open up too much all at once. But on the other hand, if you were looking forward to managing armies and cities, 10 hours might be more than some players are willing to give for the experience. In the end, Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes is asking its players to slow down, immerse themselves, and enjoy the slowly evolving world around them. And considering the fast-paced nature of today's world that promotes the urge to consume as much media as possible, that might be asking a lot for some players. But for those who yearn for an earlier time where games were crafting worlds, not just experiences, then 100 Heroes might be just the thing to scratch that itch. Overall, I enjoyed my time with Eiyuden. It reminded me that not all dialogue should be skipped, that sitting still and listening in the overworld can be a valuable use of my time, and no genre of gaming will ever truly be gone, so long as there are still those who remember it. Thanks for watching, and a big thank you to 505 Games. I actually previewed Eiyuden Chronicle Rising, the precursor to 100 Heroes, back when my channel was first starting, and it's been a joy to finally bring everything full circle. I'd also like to offer my deep condolences to Rabbit and Bear Studios. The loss of Yoshitaka Murayama was truly felt by the gaming community at large, and though he wasn't able to see his vision reach the hands of his fans, I can imagine no greater homage. And on that note, that's all I've got. Take care of yourselves, be good to one another, and I'll see you all again soon.